Hello everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. We want to talk about grazing. You know, the old adage always is, how are we going to continue to feed the population as the population grows? Well, the answer is we become more efficient at the way we do things. Grazing plays a big part of that, and today on The County Seat we're going to look at that issue. We're going to talk about new techniques that improve grazing, improve the habitat, maintain the land better, and provides more yield. We will be taking a tour of Rich County to look at this issue. In fact, we are now going to join Terry Wood to find out why the grass in Rich County is always greener.
Greener indeed, Chad. For the last 3 decades, ranchers at Deseret Land and Livestock have been trying something different on the land. Now you may be thinking to yourself, how could you do grazing differently? Don't you just drop the cattle off in a pasture and let them eat? It's called time-controlled grazing. The controlled system requires more available pastures and focuses on giving the plants time to rest and regrow.
You are limiting where the cattle are and for how long they're going to be there and how many you have in any one spot. You're going to move them in a very controlled fashion from one portion of the range to another portion of the range in such a way that you're able to manage the resources of the range and water quality such that we end up with greater productivity on that land.
Most arid lands evolved with groups of herbivores periodically feeding heavily on the landscape and then moving on. The land is used to that. So what we try to do with our livestock is make their function on the landscape be like that. In other words, they come through, they graze a pasture, they take the vegetation off, but they don't graze it to the point where they really hurt plants. We spend a particular attention to the length of time that we graze a pasture. We also think a lot about the time of year that we graze pastures. And we try to mix the time of year up.
Time-controlled grazing has been so effective that ranchers in the Three Creek area are working to replicate the system on their allotments on BLM and Forest Service lands. An economic analysis of the Three Creeks project was published in February of 2012. The findings in the report point to a number of benefits to habitat for livestock, wildlife, and improvements in riparian health and water quality.
What really struck me was the fact that the Utah Division of Water Quality has actually kicked in a couple of $1 million to help push this because of the positive impacts that they're going to have on water quality. And what this said to me was, wait a minute, they're putting their money where their mouth is, that they are backing up another state agency that essentially we're going to get a win-win. We're going to be able to keep livestock production in a rural portion of the state, and we get to improve water quality. If it wasn't worth it to the Division of Water Quality, they would not have sent the money over to the project.
For the past 30 years, Deseret Land and Livestock has used rotational grazing management with its ranching operation. As a result, they have seen an improvement in the landscape and, at the same time, increased the size of their herds.
The first thing that we saw change in the mid-'80s was that the riparian areas, the streams and the meadows that have good moisture year-long, healed up drastically. When you compare that to areas that are season-long grazed as opposed to rotationally grazed, quite often the riparian areas are the areas that look the hardest hit. Essentially what we're seeing is less bare ground and more live living plants on the landscape.
We don't often equate wildlife with a ranching operation, but another benefit of time-controlled grazing is that the abundant, nutritious green plants attract elk, mule deer, pronghorn, sage grouse, and over 260 different bird species.
They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can run livestock and you can also have wildlife, healthy wildlife populations.
Right now, various state agencies and federal agencies are under pressure to list sage grouse as a species that's under threat. In my discussions with the Division of Wildlife Resources over the beneficial wildlife habitat impacts of this, they suggest that yes, indeed, that's going to have a big impact on sage grouse habitat and restoration of that habitat so we can bring our sage grouse numbers up and hopefully avoid listing in the state.
Less bare ground means more plants, and that means more food and nutrition, even in a dry year. The end goal here is to keep ranchers on the land, to increase wildlife, and maintain clean water and a healthy habitat.
Not just get the benefit of the output, the benefit of the market production of cattle, but also to accrue the non-market benefits. That is, we're providing better habitat for animals, which has a value, and we're providing better water quality, which also has a value.
We've had a lot of independent people look at the wildlife populations here. We've had independent people look at our livestock and look at our landscape. And I absolutely believe, based on independent information, that this is a much better way of managing these western landscapes than season-long grazing.
So as we said, it does appear the grass is greener here in Rich County, but it may have more to do with proper range management than anything else. For the county seat, I'm Terry Wood.
Thank you, Terry, for that report. Now we have a good basic understanding of what is going on in grazing. We will be talking about rotational grazing and its impacts on communities and on agriculture in general when we return here on the county seat. Stay with us.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, SITLA, manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of providing financial support to further the education of Utah's students, while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, the School Land Trust Program will distribute nearly $37 million to Utah's schools this year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure. It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Millard County.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about time-controlled grazing, or as it's commonly referred to, rotational grazing. We've had a background piece. If you're just joining us, you'll just have to catch up as we go along. Our panel today is Bill Hopkin, who is the director of the Utah Grazing Improvement Program. Thank you for joining us. Alvin Schall, who's the chairman of the Three Creeks Grazing Association. I'll have some questions for you in a minute. And Commissioner Norman Weston, Commissioner of Rich County. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Okay, I guess I want to kind of define what your group is, because, most people think of grazing in Rich County, and obviously, Deseret Livestock comes right to the top of their head. What is Three Creeks? What kind of combine is this?
Well, it's several allotments combined together to have a time-controlling grazing association. and it consists of 3,200 head of cows, and what was it, about 2,000 head of sheep. And what we want to do is divide it into 2 herds and add some more pastures.
So
it out.
basically the Three Creeks group is maybe what, 20, 30 different ranchers that have taken all their AUMs or their allotments and put them together so that they can be engaged in a rotational or time-controlled grazing program. How did this concept come up? Where was this pioneered, rotational grazing?
Well, Deseret Land and Livestock had grazed in this fashion for starting in the mid-70s. And Alvin used to work at Deseret back in the 70s, Alvin. And, you know, he came out to the ranch and saw what it looked like 25 years later. And he was the one who actually brought the idea up to our program, to the Grazing Improvement Program, and then we worked with the BLM and the Forest Service and some other permittees to look at, does this make sense to try and move this private land successful model over onto a large block of public land?
Well, I was going to say, Deseret Livestock, what, 200,000 acres. They've got the ability to do something like this, but collectively, other people that maybe have, my uncle had, like 1,000 acres of his own land, but he had to use the AUMs to graze up in Idaho. So, yeah, it does present a challenge. What has been the reaction to the public land managers to this concept?
Well, they've been, BLM and Forest Service have been very supportive. It's really kind of interesting because they have their range program, which takes care of the grazing, and over the years these guys have really kind of been locked out of doing anything progressive because of NEPA and so forth and lawsuits and appeals, and so they jumped right on with this. They knew that it would work, and they were very cooperative with the permittees.
Good. Norm, let me ask you a question. This has an impact because you have all these smaller ranchers that can possibly do this. There's a big economic impact to this on Rich County, is there not?
Oh yes, Rich County, about close to probably half, I would say, of the incomes of the folks in Rich County is related to the agricultural constituency of the county. And so if we can keep these ranchers doing what they do best, managing livestock on these public lands, and they can continue to keep their tax base viable, and Rich County can continue to get our tax money from them to function the county. Well,
so, Alvin, as you put Three Creeks together and you're doing this, as an individual rancher, what benefits come from this kind of a system?
Well, the way it's planned is it'll present a lot more AUMs by proper management and time-controlled grazing. Now, our cattle are coming in on our meadows in August, and we really need that extra month. And this time-controlled grazing on this, combining these allotments, will do that.
Will allow you to actually expand your herd a little bit and get a little bit better price on the hoof?
Yeah, a little, but what it'll do mostly is expand the time. Like instead of coming in the 7th of August, we can probably stay out till the 1st of October.
Now the big impact for that actually comes from the fact that the sooner you bring them in, the sooner you have to switch to harvested feed for them instead of the open grazing. So that cuts your cost of delivery of the product to the market.
Right. Back to the economics, that 3,200 cows and roughly 2,000 sheep represent $3.2 million in annual economic activity to Rich County. Now that's not a lot of money if you're talking Wasatch Front, But to a small rural county like Rich County, that's a big deal. So that, it represents about $900 a cow to the economy, so it's important.
Is this something, Bill, that you see as being specific to Rich County, or is this something that is a wave of the future?
No, not at all. I mean, that's one reason this is, it's created a lot of interest. We have we're actually working on the Monroe Mountain, which is all Forest Service, with a similar kind of a strategy. The nice thing about it is that, the public don't want to see additional fences on the public land. But without that, at the allotment level, you don't have the capability to have really good science-based management. So if you envision these 10 allotments, each with several pastures now, combining into one unit, all of a sudden you have 23 pastures. So you can cut down the grazing periods, you can rotate the season of use, and for the first time in Rich County, I think, have the capability to rest 2 to 4 pastures annually, which is a big deal to resource health over time.
I think that might be a good topic to address in the next segment, is exactly how this works and its impact on the land. One of the things that I see right off the bat is that for issues of wildfire management, a little bit more proactive grazing would probably keep things at more of a peak of maturity and not overgrowth and not too much overgrazing. Is that one of the real key elements of this?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you can imagine a kind of a checkerboard with, as these pastures are grazed, there's a lot of benefits. They will regrow, which provides great nutrition for wildlife, like see at Deseret, and fire is a good thing. Natural fire is a good thing in this area, but not 300,000 acre fires. So, you have a lightning strike and it burns down to the pasture that's been grazed and lays down. So it saves money in fire cost, makes fire into a useful tool because it's limited in its size.
Very good. We will continue this conversation right after a break here on the county seat. It's wrapping up into a very, very informative episode. We'll see you in just a minute.
Carbon County is typically known for its industry and coal production, but that is not all. Utah's Castle Country has something for everyone. It is the home of the nationally recognized North Springs Shooting Range. North Springs provides gun hobbyists and professionals a practice and training facility that is second to none. Visit castlecountry.com for more information.
It's me, honey. My key's not working. Can you let me in?
Did you get your whooping cough booster shot?
No, I forgot. I'll get it tomorrow.
Then that's when you can come in.
What?
Whooping cough can cause permanent disability in our baby. We're not taking that chance.
I know, but
Your dinner's on the porch.
Help us stop whooping cough. Visit us online to find out where you and your family can get vaccinated.
The best part about raising children here in Vernal and the Uinta Basin is just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
It's not too big, it's not too small. We're close to the Wasatch Front if there's anything we need out there.
The support is unbelievable. Even though you don't have a kid playing high school football, you go to Friday night football.
My job has offered me the ability to college educate all 3 of my children.
My father, he was an engineer for Chevron, retired 39 some odd years. And Jeff, my husband, it's the same way. He's always worked in the oil and gas, always had a job here.
It's a wonderful place to play because there's a lot of variety between hunting, fishing.
And the beautiful mountains, and Flaming Gorge is just a short distance away.
One of the big reasons why I live where I live is I'm able to run up to a beautiful place like this and spend some good quality time. There's always plenty to do in Uinta County.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today has been rotational grazing or time-controlled grazing. And we've kind of covered some of the benefits of it and how ranchers, by pooling their AUMs together, can improve grazing, extend their grazing period, cut down on their costs of bringing their herds to market. But I want to talk about exactly, this life cycle. It's been kind of covered in the story, but I'm real curious to talk particularly about rest periods and the like. How big of an impact is this on changing the status quo? How did they used to do it compared to today?
You turn a cow out and she eats the choice grass and then goes on in a big area. And she leaves, what, 60% that she can eat? Mm-hmm. In the smaller pastures and time-controlling grazing, you put 1,600 head in a smaller area and they clean everything out. But the secret of it is you get out to another pasture. And by doing this, you end up with one pasture that can be rested for a total year without nothing. And you're making more AUMs.
If a pasture has a whole year off, its regrowth is better and it provides better forage.
Yes, it does. Because the cows, they eat everything off, they stimulate the plants, and then they...
You know, us folks down in the city would pay very, very high dollar for what they leave behind
well,
in that
yeah.
pasture, I might add.
And it all consists down to better management for everything, for the land, the wildlife, and the cattle and livestock.
What are going to be the challenges of exporting this into another area, Bill? I mean, is it's going to take consensus on the private side? What's it going to take?
Well, you know, what we've run into, and we did in Three Creeks, I mean, some of the biggest challenges are social. You know, people, it's a fairly dramatic change, both from the permittee side, you know, some within the public, particularly the environmental community, and then in some cases it's a social issue dealing with the agencies. But you know, the reality, the invasive species here for this unit is going to be kind of interesting because we have sheep, and so sheep are really good range tools. And so we'll be able to move them around. There is some Dyer's woad and a little bit of knapweed. We'll be able to move those sheep around and use that and eventually be able to take it out because we prescriptively grazed where we needed them to be.
Do your cows run with the wrong kind when they're with no one's cattle?
Well, you know, you always hear that, but they're doing that now. See, they're still running in the same allotments. This is just being a smaller area.
And if I could make a quick comment.
Sure.
You know, you mentioned, does this help with marketing? You know, this can blossom into a tremendous tool in being able to run different types of bulls in a group setting, and that have like tenderness genes and different things, and then they can market their calves. They'll all have the same sires and do it collectively, and they can demand a bigger price.
And I'd like to know more about that. We'll take a minute when we come back from this break. Stay with us. We'll be back with more of the County Seat, turning to be a very interesting conversation on time-controlled grazing. We'll see you in just a minute.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
I didn't order this. Compliments of the lady in gold. Hello, trouble.
Anything worth doing in this quiet little town?
You look like the kind of man that could show a girl a good time.
You strike me as the kind of girl that likes a manicure and a massage.
How's that for a manicure?
I hate golf.
I was hoping for something a little more vigorous.
Vigorous, I can do.
And I thought you'd be riding side saddle.
What? I'm gonna regret this. How about that manicure?
In San Rafael country, you'll discover more adventure and excitement than you can imagine. And it's only 2 hours from the Wasatch Front. Find gorges that descend thousands of feet, trails that go on forever, and the solitude of finding a place all your own. Emery County and the San Rafael Swell. We're closer than you think.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking about time-controlled or rotational grazing today. I need to say that more clearly, rotational grazing. Our guests have been most enlightening. I've really enjoyed this conversation. You know, there are always new schemes and plans and say, well, let's try this, let's try that. Bill, there's real science to this, is there not?
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, the basis of this is that it's all based on rest periods. It's healthy for plants to get grazed off as long as they have an opportunity to rest and regrow, replenish their root reserves. And so the critical time is during rapid growth. So under this scenario on the 3 creeks, there will only be 2 or 3 pastures that will actually even be used during rapid growth. And then they will have the whole rest of the year to grow, and that, of course, is moisture dependent. But it's really critical on riparian, where moisture is always available, and the livestock typically like to be there. And so we will see dramatic response in the riparian in just a year or 2.
So long term, you really will have more. You'll have more forage yield on this system than you would in an older system where you just keep coming back to the same pastures each year.
Yes, plus your harvest efficiency is much better because you can find the livestock. These pastures will average about 6,000 acres with 1,600 cows, and they when you do that with livestock, they change their eating habits. They no longer just take the best and leave the rest. So they put some pressure on plants that are less palatable. Then when you have the rest period, the palatable plants have an equal opportunity to compete for moisture and nutrients, so they do better.
That's great. Norm, any final comments from you?
I'd like to reiterate, Rich County's part in this thing has been to sit in the back seat and support the permittees as they have dealt with the BLM and the Forest Service, the different agencies. We've just been a support system for them, and we're fortunate to have the Deseret Land and Livestock. The science has been proven and tested, and so I feel like the permittees they're on the right track.
Alvin, are you happy to share this with other ranchers?
Yes, I'm definitely happy, but you know, like you got a few diehards, but I think we was voted 93% in favor, and I am really excited about it, this project.
Well, good. So if anybody really has some more questions about it and they're an old diehard and they want to be converted, they can talk to you from firsthand experience.
Yeah, I guess.
I'll have them go through Bill. Thank you for joining us for the county seat. You can find out more information about this and some other topics in our extended version on the website. We'll look for you next week on the county seat right here on ABC4.